Good evening to all parents and carers and members of the Forest community who are joining us this evening for the first of our many Forest Focus webinars which happen throughout the term and throughout the rest of the year. It's my pleasure to be joining you this evening for a conversation about digital education and supporting your child's digital education at Forest. To introduce myself, I'm Olivia Murphy. I'm Deputy Head of the Lower School with a specific responsibility for personal development. So that's your child's holistic education, their values development, their leadership development, thinking about aspects of coaching, aspects of co-curricular, aspects of RSHE. And of course, into that comes digital citizenship. And that's what we're here to focus on this evening. This is specifically a webinar aimed at Year 7 parents and carers and perhaps other families who are joining the Forest community this year. If you are a parent or carer from another year group, feel free to stay on the call, of course, but it is more a focus on new children and families to our community. It's quite a timely webinar. Obviously, it's the first of the series, and that's because, Year 7 have started this week and they underwent their digital induction just yesterday. So students have logged on to the system. They are getting familiar, if not already familiar, with our many apps and platforms that are needed in Year 7 and beyond for life and learning at Forest. The aim of this session is to share, as I said, information about the various applications and platforms. I'll be passing over in a second to Dennis Lundy, who will be able to speak to you in closer detail about the specific apps and platforms that we use and other tips and tricks that you can employ at home to support the progress, well-being and safety of your child and their technology use at home. Of course, we know that there is a whole myriad of tech questions and issues that arise for young people and indeed all of us throughout our lives and throughout our interaction with technology. It's nuanced and it's quite complex at times. So this presentation won't be able to cover everything, but it's starting a conversation and it's opening up a partnership between us and yourselves at home for supporting children to be, mindful, safe, and also successful users of technology, because we recognise that technology plays an important role in all of our lives, more importantly for our young people going into the future. So without further ado, I don't want to speak for too long. I'll pass over to Dennis Lundy, who is Director of Information and Technology, who will speak more about the systems and platforms that we use. There's an option for you to add questions into the dialogue box, so please do that throughout the presentation and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Over to Dennis.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm pleased to be able to speak to you on a topic that's pretty close to our hearts at Forest, and that's digital education. We've been at this for a decade already. We've had e-learning in place since 2013. And our mission at the time, which hasn't really changed, is that the objective of all of our digital education is to develop capable, creative, responsible learners and citizens in an evolving information society. I think we're all aware that things move or appear to move pretty quickly in these environments, but most of the time we can foresee what's coming our way and then try to accommodate that and integrate it and use it to our best advantage. So the general approach to information and information technology, those two aren't the same, is that we believe that it's best to embrace them and to educate our pupils and indeed everyone involved, our staff as well, in the use of the technologies, and also to deal with how information itself is changing and what its impacts are on society. So let's carry on. In 2017, this is just for some context, to let you know that we do look quite far ahead. At this time, we were trying to see what the world may look like for our pupils who were entering school in 2017. They are probably, possibly your your children now at about 12 or so, I think. That was a good 6 years ago. And these were the kind of things that were showing up at the time, was artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and so on. And as you know, artificial intelligence has come along with a great big noise and a tremendous amount of hype. Some of that is necessary to respond to quickly, and some of it is not. So I hope we'll reassure you on that in that aspect. Just to give you a little bit of context about my role, I'm the information director in the school. The areas that I'm responsible for are the information services and digital education as a support service to the staff in the school. Kind of starting from the bottom of the slide, this is where the basics happen. Our infrastructure, these are our networks and our systems, the devices that your children bring to school. This is where we have the most direct impact and where we have to do the essential work of securing and safeguarding pupils while they are at school, but also when they're using our applications online. So this is very important in the Microsoft 365 environment, where we are very heavily involved, and it's necessary to obviously secure pupils when they're doing any work relating to the school. Our next layer in this sort of cake as we go up is our data services. This is where we look at teaching and learning reporting and analysis. We're looking at some really interesting developments in this to try to get more real-time feedback in our learning applications. Next level up is digital education. This is where we introduce the full range of teaching and learning applications that our pupils can use. A great many of those are specialized to the subject areas. And then, of course, we use the whole Microsoft 365 environment, including Teams, OneNote, and a swathe of other parts of the suite, and have been doing since 2017, 2018, in fact. So our teaching staff and all the pupils are thoroughly familiar with this environment for doing assignments, for doing pretty much all of their day-to-day communications and interaction. Right at the sort of top of the stack is where we're dealing with information resources. This is things that our pupils use for learning and for research. So these are our libraries. They're all fully digital. They're fully available from anywhere. Catalogs are online. And through those, they can get to their subjects, any resources relating to their subject areas. And this is also an area that focuses heavily on information and media literacy education, which is a part of our project qualifications, which you may know our pupils do at GCSE and A levels. So that's the broad scope of what we do. And we can have a quick look at where we've been and where we typically are. At the moment, and since 2013, all the pupils bring their own devices. They are not managed devices under the school's network, as some schools do. This was a deliberate choice at the time and remains so, based on data which suggested that pupils take more responsibility and ownership and engagement with the devices if they're their own, whereas school-owned devices tend to get thrown thrown away or dropped or generally not looked after, and then the children tend to have their own devices, PCs, laptops, tablets, and other things at home anyway. So when we started out in 2016 was a first sort of set of measures that we looked at how many pupils or sessions we have active on any one of our learning applications in a particular day. And at that stage, it was about 800 a day. And now we're moving at approximately 1,500 children active in every period on our systems in one way or another. So one of the things that the school has then become fairly dependent on having the systems available. That might sound like a lot, but keep in mind that every assignment that's set, every activity, every just a quick look up at something, search for something, do this, do that. They're small tasks often, but they involve using one of our systems or solutions. Learning and collaboration involves our online teaching and learning applications. Again, this is predominantly the Microsoft 365 Teams and OneNote applications, and then we have to focus on developing the skills in that area. So yesterday was the beginning of that, and your children would have been exposed to OneDrive, they would have been told about Teams, but they wouldn't have had a lot of opportunity to try them out or to use them. Part of the exercise yesterday was very much to get them connected and to see that they're able to work, which, given that they have their own devices, isn't always the easiest task, but we seem to have got there for this year. An area that you can really help us in is the one of OneDrive. So the teachers would typically start now. All of the children are in teams for every lesson, so there's a team per class that they have, and it's in that context that the teacher would set them assignments, and they will also use OneNote, which the teacher can use to distribute resources, worksheets, quizzes, and other activities through. If they have to write a piece of work or do a presentation, for example, they're going to do something in Excel or Word or PowerPoint, what I would like to ask of parents is to help them along and make sure that they are working in the online versions of all software. So we're encouraging them to start every day and every lesson and everything they do from Edge, which is now the school's default browser. Web browser, I'll talk about that a little bit later, along with Bing as the search engine. What they can do from Edge is they can get at any of these apps, and they can get at OneDrive directly. The reason I'm making a point about this is that we've had, until quite recently, GCSE students come to us a week or so before their projects are due, and they have lost their work. And they lost the work because it was saved on a laptop directly instead of having the work online. It's a really easy thing to do, because if they open Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint from their desktop, that's from the little Windows button in the bottom left-hand corner, then there are two things they have to do. They have to keep saving that document, and they're inclined not to always look to see where it's being saved. So it can really easily end up on the hard disk of the laptop and not be in the cloud. So it's important, encourage them, if you can, over the next 6 weeks or so, just have a look, ask them to show you the folders that they work in, have a bit of a look into OneDrive and see that their work is there and that their files are named in ways that their teachers can also make some sense of what's in the document. All of this helps to smooth the processes for them. So also make use of SharePoint, and then we have a range of learning applications. We've got more than 250 online learning applications, and we have a number of AI-assisted learning applications, which are in a category of applications called adaptive learning applications, and these help to provide a more personalized learning experience for our pupils. We can chat a little bit more about that later. So what is it that we want out of this environment for our pupils? We want them to be able to find, create, and share information and knowledge without being bound by time, place, or device, which means they can do it from anywhere and at any time. That's available to them, but they need to step in there and do all of those things, of course. We have access to global online and learning opportunities and applications. They're a full range, and the subject areas are most acquainted with what these are in each of the areas. The other is that they can learn and work together effectively using current information and communication technologies. Good example is either in OneNote or Microsoft Teams. Often groups and classes work together to come up with solutions. They share the information on a shared whiteboard. So they're pretty active and interactive in a lot of the lessons with these technologies. So I'll chat a little bit more about our library services. We provide access to physical and online information resources, which are accessible. They provide information data literacy education and support the development of independent research and critical analysis, analytical skills. They play an essential part in the project qualifications at both levels, and there are a number of really interesting options for them going ahead with some of the technologies, search technologies that are becoming available, and also tools to do referencing and citations and a whole lot of research support, supporting apps that make their lives a little bit easier, but still demand a fair amount of rigor in terms of actually looking at the content, which is what's important. Some of the resources available in the library in terms of research are Encyclopedia Britannica, obviously, JSTOR, BBC, the News Archive, The Day. There are tons of them. We've also got upward of 10,000 curated websites, meaning that the librarians have actually looked at all of those sites, spoken to someone in the academic departments, made sure that these sources are good and reliable, and they also catalogue them. Students can get at them. Some of the exciting things coming our way are the developments in Microsoft, especially via Edge and now Bing, which is coming with the same sort of AI technology as ChatGPT, because you might know that Microsoft are heavily involved with ChatGPT. We don't really go into that space as a school. At the moment, we watch and learn, but we prefer to take the approach that we will use that technology as it emerges in the Microsoft domain, where we're sure that it is focused on the more reliable parts of the internet for search, and also to make sure that it's always possible to see the original source of the information that's been presented. But there's a search coach, which is a very useful app that's coming along in the Microsoft space, and we expect to see a whole slew of things called co-pilots. These are productivity assistants, for example. If you want to do a PowerPoint and you want to change the colors, you could just say, please change the color to background colors to blue, instead of working your way through a long and complicated menu structure. That demands that the pupils also, and our staff, teachers, everyone, acquire a few new skills in terms of speaking to these artificial intelligence agents. That's all coming our way. Just a quick just a snapshot of some of the resources that are available. It's really quite extensive. There's this collection made for every subject, so our pupils can see per subject any books, any articles, any PDF like documents, and any applications that relate to that subject for their year group. So the library is a good place to go, and I'd ask you, along with watching their OneDrive, just to check in that maybe sometime they're having a look at the library just for some fiction, or we've got a fantastic fiction collection, and they can reserve that from home, pick it up at school. So do encourage them to go there and browse around and look at the stuff there. It's generally better than and more reliable they'll find by doing a quick Google search. Then next we're going to chat a little while about rights and responsibilities that are really close to our hearts. And this is a kind of a culture of responsibility that we're trying to create and work with, taking this area from the perspective that if we pick up our responsibilities to respect the rights of others, then pretty much we can expect reciprocity, and that we will be treated likewise. We don't have to wait for others to start by treating us in the right way. We can start by behaving responsibly ourselves. Yesterday, all the pupils went through with their tutors a chat about responsible use of information, their devices, and how to communicate and how to report concerns, and a whole lot of other things. I'd really ask you to chat to the pupils, chat to your children about them. I'll run through these areas briefly, just to give you some background in terms of what they signed up to. The responsible user agreement is a really important aspect of our behavioral management in the school, and also to progress our pupils and educate them. So just in terms of using their own devices, there are a number of rules as to what they can and can't do with them, where they should, just looking after them basically, and when they may use phones, what they must do with their laptops, and so on. So it's worth just going over those with them. Then there's this heavy focus on data privacy and security, and this deals with things like their password setting, not sharing passwords. Just a note for parents, please, you should not sign in with your children's login details to the school systems. That is a problem for us in terms of both privacy and security and safeguarding for the pupils, because effectively what's happening, and we're teaching the children very specifically not to misrepresent their age online, not to pretend to be somebody else, not to impersonate people, and generally not to be dishonest online. So it's quite as simple as that. This is quite important for us in terms of what might happen in social media contexts. Our pupils tend in year 7 to want to connect to everybody else, which is really expected and everything, they might veer towards WhatsApp. It's a very difficult area because the terms and conditions for WhatsApp are that they need to be, if they're under 16, they need parental consent, and you would need to set the accounts up for them. Why it's important to be aware of the social media age restrictions and limits is that we're severely limited in terms of what we can do if there are any incidents and between pupils, and we need to follow up with any of these providers if the pupils either misrepresented their age or set up a fake account or did any kind of things like that, then we're in a really hard position to assist with, for example, withdrawing information or closing accounts and stuff like that. It becomes really quite tricky. So my request to you is please be on top of that. Please be aware if there's talk about WhatsApp, do go and have a look at the terms and conditions. I'm quite happy to send information out to people. It's sometimes quite difficult to see on those websites of theirs where all this information resides and how to do things, how to help them to set their social media accounts up in a legal and proper way. One of the rules in the responsible user agreement is also that they must abide with all the terms and conditions of the learning applications that we use, as well as in their use of social media in their private capacities, if that comes anywhere near involving other pupils in the school and where the school may need to get involved. In any event, it's good for them to adhere to the terms and conditions of any web online service. Respecting the rights of others, we speak about that. Again, it's got to do with other people have a right. It's got to do with what we say and don't say, how we can communicate. So there's an extensive section in the responsible user agreement about information that's inappropriate, restricted or protected. This speaks to everything from communication which involves any form of bullying, any form of racism, sexism, homophobia, any form of really inappropriate content and inappropriate sharing of information. Also, we do speak to them about the rights of their friends, if they do want to post pictures of people, of their friends anywhere on any media, that the polite thing to do is to ask if their friends are happy with that, and if not, to respect that, the wish of their friends, and also if somebody asks them not, or to take something down, or to take it away, that they do that simply on the basis of, if this were to happen to them, how would they feel if somebody else refused to take down an embarrassing picture or something that they didn't like. Still on their rights, our pupils under the Data Protection Act are data subjects of ours, of course, and they enjoy all the rights under the Data Protection Act. So they have the right to access the information about them from the school, they have the right to object to things, and so on. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion about age. The pupils from children from 13 onwards across the country are deemed to be fit to exercise their own rights. Sometimes this might come your way. If one of the teachers or one of the officers says, "Oh, you've asked for some information about them," and we might say, "You know what? Or we have to ask this of your child," and we've had some parents get quite upset about that, but the obligation on us is to honor that. That doesn't mean that we don't engage with parents or keep them informed, but we do try to make sure that the children's rights are properly managed by the school, and it's part of the children's learning as well. Very important for you is to support that, because it's one of the few pieces of legislation in the country where children are empowered to act on their own behalf. So while the school will provide a lot of support and for their safety and to try and help them out with things and to help them if they've got in trouble online, they might not tell us, they might not speak to a trusted adult, and then they could flounder. So it's really important that they know that they, in their own right, if there's something online that they don't like, or where something went wrong, or something didn't quite work out and they want to take it down, or they want some action taken and it falls within their rights, that they are able to do it themselves, and you can help them with that by pointing them in those directions. Like if something happens over here or over there, you can contact the media, the social media companies, any organization, in fact, and say, listen, I want you to take this down. I object to having this image around. So it's a really powerful capacity that they have. So please do support them in that. The last part of the agreement deals with who to report concerns to and how to look for help and advice. If it's privacy related, they can always come to me. If it's and they have the whole of the pastoral team in the school and their tutors and the safeguarding team that they can reach out to, and of course a range of other apps and services that are available online to them, where they can get information and where they can potentially also get support and help. I think that's pretty much everything as far as rights and responsibilities are concerned. So let's get back to a few more interesting things for this term. Our focus is on Microsoft Edge as a school to start to use it. It's been our default browser for 2 years, but we haven't really promoted and expected its use. Given the direction that the Microsoft suite is taking and the tools that are becoming available to us, this is an area that we will be focusing on in the short term. It's also something that you can really help the pupils with, your children, nudge them in that direction. If they have an Apple device, for example, help them to get Edge installed if they haven't, and play around. It's an interesting browser to play around with. It's got a lot of useful things for them. Bing is, of course, the associated search engine, so they can start to play around with Bing Chat. No harm in that. It's safe, it's inside the school environment, and they will see just what it does by trying it out and searching for a few things. Then there's a little funny looking monster at the back there. It's associated with a Teams app that's called Reflect, and this allows helps them with social emotional learning to identify emotions, and it does a few other interesting little things that allow them to kind of check in on themselves if they want to, or if the school decides to look at it as a mechanism to get feedback. We'll be playing around with that and having a good look at it with the pastoral team and others in the school. So that's something exciting. We are moving many of our systems have already moved into the cloud. So this is all the stuff in the center, which is of this slide, which has got to do with security, safety at a technical level. We've already moved most of our applications off site. We have a few things, 1 or 2 applications left that run off of our own servers and our own premises. The rest is all online, and anything that's sensitive, any of our sort of documents, etc., are all in one way or another in Azure, and the focus will be on the whole of the Microsoft 365 suite as far as securing it is concerned and making sure that everything's watertight. You probably know that there've been some schools have been out of action nearby for a couple of weeks because a single central register or something was on a local server, and it's just there's been some word around in the sort of communities that it's better to have these things on local servers. It really isn't, because Microsoft, for all their difficulties and stuff, have got something like 4,000 security people working, whereas schools can typically have one person who's part-timing. In that space, we've also sourced out to get some really specialized security and network specialists onto our team. There's focus on the human side as well. We use an application called Boxfish to train and get our staff attuned to detecting potential malware, ransomware, etc. So it's part of the education as well. We're looking at this for our students as well. They've got some offerings for them that they can also use this kind of learning to become more familiar with the sort of security threats that are out there. We use the National College for some interesting things, and you might see at the end of our event this evening. They do provide some really useful information and tips for parents on everything relating to social media, information technology, risks, issues in the sort of safeguarding and safety space. So we will be asking you if you're interested in getting a weekly from us in this, which might really be useful for you, especially in this first year of senior school. On the very right-hand side are our sort of administration systems. There's some developments going on there, and the intent there is to get them moving together in a direction that we are more able to profile and to get more real-time analytics regarding both our operations, and our learning applications. One of the apps that you might have come across if your children were at Forest in the prep school, or even elsewhere, is an app called Century Tech. This is one that we will also be putting. It's not on the slide there, but it's one that we'll be putting more effort into. We've had it for 7 years, almost 7 years, and it's an adaptive learning platform, and we're looking at deploying this in a more structured way over the next few years and integrating it into our curriculum. So that pretty much is it. This is really what we're doing this term in the near future. I've just spoken about all of those. Here's an example of what you can expect to see from national online safety. If you decide that this is something that you're interested in receiving every week or so, we can send you some information like this, which might be of interest to you. And yeah, that's it from me. Time for some questions. Olivia?
Thank you. Dennis, we've just had a question specifically for you about the advantage to use Edge over Chrome. You just mentioned it there, that's what the school is recommending. I wonder whether you could just speak a bit more on that.
Yes, indeed, I can. So because Edge is included, it's part of the Microsoft suite. One of the things that helps our children and immediately in the school as they arrive is that the search facility that Bing uses inside of Edge allows them to search for anything in the world like Chrome would, but it also looks inside of the school at anything that's been shared with them. So it's the fastest and easiest way for them if they're looking to find out what's my teacher's email address, or they just start by using like a normal search like thing, type the person's name in, their name will pop up, they'll be able to see their email address. If they're looking for something relating to their subject, they'll just type in their mathematics year 7 and it will pop up with all the things that either the maths department has shared with them or that they're entitled to see. So it helps them tremendously just with navigating the school environment itself by looking inside of the whole of the Microsoft environment, which is huge and can be very difficult. We have an intranet, which is a SharePoint one, and obviously they can get to their subjects that route as well, but then they have to navigate down a long, complicated or fairly complicated menu to get to their subjects or to find information that will kind of remember where was it that I had this. They don't have to do any of that when they use Edge. The other is that it has a feature called Collections, which really supports research well. It kind of it's sort of like filing shortcuts, and it allows them, if they're busy in a subject context of doing some inquiry-based learning or something, they pick up a website that's of interest, they can just sort of store it in one of these collections. It's a bit like Pinterest, but it's not shared with other people, it's just for them. What else? There's automatic referencing if they are doing research work. It picks up the citations and does all that sort of work or assistance for them. So there are a number of I can go on and on about this for too long, but it's the most convenient for them to use. It is also the only place that they can safely make use of the chat bots. So it's included with Bing, and they are ahead of the rest on actually getting a safe ChatGPT based AI search tool, and we actively want to get them involved with that so that they can interact with those. That's also via Edge.
Dennis, just to interrupt you there, we've had sort of a two-part comment, I think. A comment about the age restrictions on Edge. App Store seems to suggest it's 17 plus, which obviously is tricky because that's what we use at school. So a useful follow-up question is, are there any restrictions that need to be put in place to avoid inappropriate use on Edge, which I think could be interesting to think about, if anything springs to mind there? Restrictions on Edge itself.
All right. That's interesting about the App Store. That's quite a strange one. So can we park that one and I'll just have a good look? Is this on the Microsoft App Store? I'm not sure which one we're talking about.
Not sure. I think that, the point about
it comes if your children have got a Microsoft device, then Edge is on there already. So this can only apply if potentially with a Mac, but I don't think so. We had some pupils install them and get that edge. I'm fairly confident of that from a Mac. We didn't have that many with Macs, so I'll follow up on that one.
I think
if
if people continue to add questions, just if there's any more, please do put them in the chat now. Thank you for those that have come so far. It's really helpful to start the conversation. And indeed, if there's any questions that you have that perhaps are bigger, we are always looking to add new topics and new themes for the Forest Focus webinars. So please do share them, and we'll be asking for feedback on that.
Olivia, I can respond to another question of Simon's, if that's okay. Restrictions need to be put in place to avoid inappropriate use. For as long as the pupils are on premises, we run all the web filters and monitoring happens. So there are two different sides to that. On the one hand, we block them from accessing a whole, any kind of sites that are not appropriate for school. We've got a pretty comprehensive filtering system for that, and then we also monitor a range of apps. For example, things like YouTube or Netflix, or there's some of those are not barred, so they can be accessed, but we do monitor their use so that we can follow up if there's if somebody is spending an inordinate amount of time on any one of those. We get a little flags and hit list on that. At home, unless you running similar sort of restrictions on your in your sort of home infrastructure, you're as safe as you are with a Google search or any other one. It's basically just what you don't want them to access at a given time.
I think it's important to say that, obviously sanctions and things for misuses of devices is something that we're mindful of. And of course, the responsible user agreement does speak about sanctions and necessary sanctions that follow as a result of the small number of students that do, misuse their device in school. But part and parcel of that is also about education of the students in terms of healthy habits and well-being. And the two aren't mutually exclusive. So, we do sanction, but we're educating them as well. And I think that speaks to a broader point that we have, whilst we've got parents on the call, if you like, that we are also asking for support in, modelling healthy habits. We speak to the students about that in the personal development curriculum often, but everything that you can do at home only strengthens the education that they have. So, just next week, we're speaking to them about charging their devices in the kitchen, not in their bedrooms, about setting screen time limits on apps that they use. We're all guilty of scrolling too much. So just any encouragement that you can offer at home to support is most welcome in terms of the lighter side. Obviously, Dennis is speaking to the technical side as well there. I hope that helps clarify a few questions. So, thank you. I really hope that this has been useful for you as new members of the Forest community and perhaps existing members as well. In a second, there'll be an opportunity for you to provide feedback and any further suggestions, as I say, for future Forest Focus webinars. So there's a QR code about to be displayed. Just a couple of signposts from me before we go. We are looking at other videos that you might be interested in watching. Of course, we did a online safety webinar just last academic year. So if you looked up on the usual Forest YouTube channel and search online safety, there is another video, that you can watch there. Coming up next, we have a webinar which is all about the provision of mental health support at Forest, and I guess in many ways digital wellbeing and mental health support are quite interchangeable there. I just see one final question, and I do wonder whether we should just pass on to you, Dennis, there, that final question about ChatGPT.
Sure.
And how
That's a good question, and I'm going to speak on behalf of the deputy head academic, I think, in this situation. So I might not have it 100% right, but the school's approach, as far as I know, on that one is that we do accept that pupils are going to use ChatGPT for their homework. There's no way that we can stop them at home from doing that. But so again, I'll go right back to the first thing that we said. The thing is to embrace and educate. So in that context as well, the stance taken by the academic department is to say these things are going to get used. It's part of life. We need to get used to it. If it's a formal assessment or an essay or something that makes a significant difference, we have the tools in both our Century platform and in Turnitin, which that can counter those things. It's also at this stage for our teachers really quite easy to pick up. It's really easier than one might think at this stage. I'm not saying it's going to stay that way, to pick up that one of these assistants actually did the writing. What's also interesting is that if the pupils if they don't kind of formulate their questions correctly, and this is a skill that the school is going to try and work at developing for them, so that when they use these agents, they use critical approaches, and that they know how to interrogate the systems, so that they don't go off into some odd direction, which also then is immediately fairly obvious. We will encourage them to make use of this chat and search facility in Bing, and that's because it's referenced and it's kind of, so we want to steer them in that direction. I hope that answers the questions to some extent, but Mr. Key, I think, would be a good person to chat to about that. I do know that we don't want to avoid the situation. We rather want to move to get on top of it.
Thank you, Dennis. And I just wanted to add that final answer there, because I think ChatGPT, of course, is a conversation that many of us are having. So thank you for your answer there. And indeed, Mr. Key will be able to speak to that more in more depth. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We really value getting these opportunities to speak with you. And as I say, feedback on the QR code is mostly appreciated. And we welcome you to attend the next Forest webinar on the 18th of September, focusing on mental health support. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.